Um, I'm with Nature Collective in San Diego, and we actually have been using your how to teach nature journaling to go ahead and create some lessons for teachers, actually a journaling series. So we have like introductory lessons for like how do you make a science notebook cover, the basics of I notice, I wonder. We have a lesson for journal entering. We did go ahead and give recognition that we adapted our lessons from the book. I think we have 6 or 7, so they build upon each other and give teachers a different avenue for teaching nature journaling. It comes with it. We created a teacher's guide. We created slide presentations. We have a couple of videos that we included in that, and we also have like worksheet pages in case there's families that want to go ahead and participate in that. We'll be putting it on our website for the public to use as also. We're hoping we do partner with the school district and a couple other ones, a little less so, but so we're hoping that teachers will develop, we'll go ahead and utilize them. We're looking to develop teacher training courses and how to implement and how to use school grounds. They're also set up that if teachers wanted to go ahead and have students do them at home, the slide presentations help the students be able to do it independently, and that it does not always have to be in the classroom. We're hoping to be able to lead discussions on Zoom. We don't know if that's going to be possible yet or not. So at this point, we'd like to be able to be involved in that. However, if that is not feasible for the school districts, the lessons are certainly set up that teachers could go ahead and implement them.
Oh, Debbie, tell me the name of your organization again.
Nature Collective.
Tell us a little bit background on Nature Collective.
We're a nonprofit environmental organization. Not only do we have our education department that typically was devoted to field trips, so we actually did field trips primarily for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, focusing on the NGSS standards. But we also had a couple for high school and middle school as well. We also provided family outings on the weekends to go ahead and promote more families getting out in nature. We also have scientists involved in researching and monitoring the Santa Leo Lagoon primarily, but we're also involved in other areas for restoration purposes. So
that's really cool. Where are you based?
We're based in Solana Beach. Our office is Solana Beach.
Cool. And those resources that you created, those are going to be available for families and teachers, not just in your district, but everywhere on your website.
We will have it on our website, yes.
You rock. Is when that comes online, could you let me know? I'd love to link to it. I'm trying to create pages of resources for teachers who want to be doing this. That sounds really cool.
Sure, absolutely. Thanks.
So I'm going to kind of reflect some of the things that I heard Debbie saying there. So in addition to you're creating some videos that students themselves can watch. These won't be a sort of a live thing, but it's a pre-recorded video that people could check at any time. You also have other videos that are specifically for the teachers to kind of gear them up and prep them for what they're doing. And you're also planning the possibility of some online meetings and trainings. I guess those would be sort of more live things with the teachers to help support them in doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So we have the slide presentations. Yeah. We only created a couple videos.
Okay.
I'm also very much aware that you and Emily are putting together a whole component supporting that as well, which is great.
Yeah, and just because me and Emily or Emily and I are doing that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be doing this, because everybody's going to take a slightly different angle on it. We've been kind of like so focused on how we're doing it that I'm sure we're overlooking and not seeing other really useful ways of presenting and angles on this information.
Mhm.
The more of us, and also everything that Emily and I are creating, all of that is open source for organizations like Nature Collective and other folks to be able to use, tweak, do whatever you want with. If you want to just take it and use it as it is, that's great. Or if you look at it and you see like, oh yeah, there's a better way, let's do this on it. We like that. We like that a lot.
Super. Great. Thanks.
Thank you very much for doing that.
Mhm.
And so that when you are doing meeting stuff, the platform that you have been using is Zoom.
Yes.
Okay.
We tried a little with Google, I think it's Google Meets.
Mhm.
Right now, we haven't noticed that you can do any kind of breakout sessions, which we thought would be really helpful if we're having students share their journals. But we haven't found that. I've heard that Google is trying to go ahead and incorporate that, but I don't know if or when that'll be available.
Great. Thank you so much.
All right.
Um, uh, and other folks who are have been tinkering with us, either or as Debbie's been doing, they've already done. They're already in really deep. What have your experiences been? What are you doing to set yourself up and prepare?
I'll go ahead and share if that's okay. My name is Melinda Nakagawa, and I've been teaching nature journaling for, gosh, well, I'm full-time actually for the last 4 months in different ways. I do a free Sunday workshop for anybody to come, families, adults, any age, and we journal together. And the format that I use is online together for a short period of time on Zoom. And then everyone logs off and goes into nature with a prompt, and they do their journaling, and then we come back together and then we share our journals. And then so I facilitate that, and I'm modeling how to give positive feedback on each person's journal page. And so I'm hoping that I'm creating this teaching others how to be looking at other journal pages, and the purpose of sharing, that it is really that learning that happens in collaboration. So that has been really successful. I've used Zoom because it was something I was already familiar with. The problem that I have with Zoom is that it kind of forces me back into a didactic mode of teaching, which is not naturally what I want to be, because when I'm in person, I'm much more interactive, and you could do things that you can't do when you're on the computer. But I've kind of figured out a way that it works, and feels like I'm creating a connection with people. And that's what I've learned, is the people on the other end really want connection. Like, they're less focused about how much content they're receiving, like the information, because if they're stressed out and there's too much coming at them, they're not going to learn. It's not conducive to learning. So I've really learned that giving less is more, because then they're really receiving that information. And then by me doing a demonstration, so I use a document camera, the same one that Jack uses. It's an IPVO VZR, and it's really easy to use. I just plug it into my laptop computer, and for me, it's super easy. I don't have any problems with it, and then I can demonstrate how am I going to nature journal this thing with the class. So I've also hopped into some classes in the springtime for colleagues of mine who had classrooms, and tried it out. I think they both had, one had Zoom and one had the Google version. And so we would do a demonstration with the document camera, and the students would do alongside. Either that, or I'd send them off and they would do something and then come back. But there was always, I made sure that there was a sharing component, and explaining that the purpose of sharing is not to, because people get a little self-conscious, and it's not about showing off our work, but really sharing what we've seen so that everyone can learn from it. And then just really prefacing that, because I think so many of us are self-conscious about our work, especially if we feel like we are limited in our drawing or nature journaling or writing in any way. And I've gotten really good feedback from the students and from the teachers that I've done that with. And so I am looking to this fall, working with teachers and inviting teachers to connect with me if they're interested, and I would come to their classroom on Zoom and do a nature journaling lesson for you in your classroom with your students, to kind of give you a sense of like how that might work. And then if the teachers were interested, to work with them in a small group or privately to help you get better skills with nature journaling, and how do you present this on an online format? How do you combine online with actually being outside? You know, either depending on what state you're in, you might be meeting with your students, and how can I help you facilitate, you know, taking your students outside? Or if you're online, how can you incorporate lessons that are going to be inspiring the children to go outdoors to do this activity and then come back and share? One of the sharing things that I've gotten, let's see, in my classes, so I've been teaching adults for the last few months, and the sharing aspect, that can be a little tricky. So on my Sunday calls, I just have people hold up their picture in front of the camera. And one tip that I'm going to share with you is, if you do it that way, to have them prop if they're sitting at a desk, prop their elbows up and prop their book, to keep it as still as possible, because with Zoom, and depending on your resolution of the camera, it's going to be really blurry and it's hard for everyone to see what's going on. So the more still they can do, or maybe even prop their hands on the computer, right? And then just like hold the book up as still as possible. So that's one tip that I've discovered is really helpful. So you can share that way. Another way that you can share is, I'm sure many of you have used different things. I think I've heard people talk about Flipgrid or Slack, but I think I'm going to use Padlet for my introductory nature journaling class for this next session that's coming up. Because what I've found is it's actually a really cool electronic bulletin board, and you can post, I've kind of did a sample one, and I like the way that it looks. The students can upload a picture of their nature journal page that you can put the topic, like let's say this week it's comparison. So do your comparison nature journal page and pop it up there. And then as the teacher, you can give that feedback right away, because I think it's important to give that feedback not at the end of the semester, but like right there, as soon as they do the activity, and let them know like what they're doing right, so that they can, you know, move forward. And I think Jack calls it feed forward, and so I really like that term instead of feedback, right? Let's give them that information right away, like, yes, you know, you're noticing these details and you're putting that into your notebook, or whatever it is that you're learning. And Jack's book, How to Teach Nature Journaling, has a really great section on how to give that feed forward information. So I highly recommend that book. Getting a copy of that, the physical copy is really helpful for me, because then I can flip through it, but that has a really great section. I've also found that sometimes just looking through a book can be really overwhelming. So what I'm hoping to do personally is to work with teachers one-on-one or in small groups to help guide you live online with Zoom. So I just know that I learn better that way instead of watching a video. So that's my personal take on it. And let's see, what was the other thing? So Padlet is what I've tried. I've also tried WhatsApp as a kind of a chat group. I don't know how that works with kids, but with adults I've used it, and that worked okay. But I really like the ability on Padlet that you can look on a computer screen, and everyone can give comments on what's going on. And you can also limit, like, you know, maybe you don't want them to give comments to each other. But I think that teaching the students on how to look at another nature journal page and look for something that they liked about it, or they think that they might want to harvest, you know, to use in their nature journal page. So if you set it up and teach your students about the importance of sharing in that way, I think you know, then they'll be less self-conscious about looking at others and looking at that, you know, instead of comparing how good that person is to my drawing, like what is it in that page that is so exciting that I want to use in my page next time, right? To kind of get that excitement. So those are kind of some of the things that I've learned, you know, in the last couple of years about teaching nature journaling, but really intensely in the last 4 months of doing it online, is that really the connection is important. You know, if you can make that connection with your students in this new school year, and make them feel like you're just not a talking face on the screen, right? Like, you know, just get them that conversation flowing, you know, that energetic conversation. I think that's the key, because it can be overwhelming. I'm watching my daughter who just started high school today, and she's overwhelmed with just 3 hours of being on the screen for an orientation. So if a high school student feels that way, what does a third grader, a second grader, a fifth grader, how do they feel because of the way that our teaching is like being transferred online? So what can we do as nature journal instructors, like alleviate that stress? You know, let's encourage them to go outside. Maybe during your class, I really highly encourage you, if you have a 30-minute or 45-minute class, taking 20 minutes of that class, making your students go outside their front door or into their kitchen, grabbing a piece of fruit and drawing that, right? And then teaching them how the principles of nature journaling, so that when we can go outside together, they're already kind of building that. So I think I've spoken a lot, so hopefully that wasn't too overwhelming, fire hosing you with lots of information. But those are some of the things that, you know, came up to me this morning.
I want to just sort of jump in and get you, Melinda, to say a little bit more, because something that I have heard from a lot of different angles is something that you mentioned it a few times, this idea of making connection.
Yeah.
And that creating this supportive environment. That's something that I've heard from a lot of different people, that when they have been in your classes, and by the way, Melinda has these give us the date and time of it, that your workshops.
Yeah, so every Sunday I have 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, or Pacific Daylight, a Nature Journal club. Everyone is welcome, that you can join for free. It's donation based. And so that's a great way to get a taste of like what nature journaling could look like. And it's just going to be how it comes through me. So, you know, it's not the perfect way, but it is the way that I've figured out how to do it that works for me.
And so tell us, so I want to encourage people to check those out, where you can actually see Melinda doing what we're talking about here. But can you tell us a little bit more about just some logistics of making connection in this virtual environment? What are some practical things that you do for making that connection with people, so that they feel that there's actually a relationship with you that is supporting them and helping them go forward?
Yeah, I actually haven't thought about the specific things, but now that you ask, I'll just kind of say what comes to my mind. One is that's really important when you're on Zoom or any of these video things, is to look into the camera. So don't look at the gallery of faces. I'm looking directly at my camera. So I'm seeing the gallery of faces with my peripheral vision. And when I look into the camera, it feels like I'm looking at you, right? So if I'm looking down at people's faces and I'm talking like this, you don't feel that connection, because it looks like I'm looking away. So that's one thing that I would recommend, is like looking directly at the camera. And it takes some practice. So just, you know, you can actually go on Zoom by yourself and just set up your own meeting, right? And then practice. You can record it and see what it feels like when you're looking at that green dot, or when you're looking down at the gallery. So that's number one. Another thing that I do with my Sunday sessions is I try to have everyone in, I think this, so I'm going to share what I do, and it might be different. You'll just need to modify it for your class, but put in chat, you know, everyone puts in chat, you know, let us know where you're calling from, because I have an international group from all over the world, and tell us where you're zooming in from, and let me know something that you're grateful for today. And, you know, that might feel a little awkward and uncomfortable if it's the first time you've done it, and if your students have never done this before, but I think it's a wonderful practice to develop and to put into your classroom. Because, you know, when we think about what we're grateful for, we're coming into this ability to settle into what's around us, right? And nature journaling is a practice of gratitude. I hear Jack talk about all the time, you know, that this like love is this sustained, compassionate attention to something. And I love that description. So when we are nature journaling, we are expressing love, and gratitude is a form of love. So you know, take it or leave it. But that's what I really strive to do, is like, by everyone getting into the practice of thinking about something that they're joyful or grateful for, then it creates that community, because we start to get to know each other. When my group was only 12 or 15 people, I could go around the circle and everyone can say their name and their one thing that they're grateful for. Now that I have about 45, average about 45 people, it's a little harder. So then I use the chat, and it feels less personal. So because of that, I make sure that during the call, I'll like scroll down and I'll say, like, oh my gosh, you know, welcome so-and-so from this, and they're grateful for this. And then just kind of try to pop in some of those names so that they're in the conversation. You know, you say, hey, Johnny's grateful for his cat. That's awesome. I'm grateful for my cat too. And Susie really is grateful that she had a warm breakfast cereal this morning. You know, so as much as you can. I know you can't do everybody because you have probably 30 kids in your class, but that's another way to create connection. Let's see, another way to create connection is during the sharing time, actually throughout the whole call, when a comment or maybe a facial expression that I get when I'm seeing, and I just get this sense that I need to share about maybe the idea of pencil miles that Jack talks about, you know, growth mindset. So you're probably familiar with growth mindset, that none of these things that we're teaching is a talent, right? That you got to throw that out the window. And teaching our students that, like, so-and-so is not talented. I mean, they've just put a lot of effort into it. It's a skill. Drawing and observing and nature journaling is a skill. Everything's a skill. And you can do this. Right? It just takes practice. And so in introducing the idea of pencil miles, like Jack talks about, I really like that, you know, that the more time that your pencil hits the page and the more lines you draw, the better you are going to get the hand-eye coordination, right? That's the other thing. So I think throughout the whole sessions, I'm throwing in these little tidbits of, it's actually, I was writing down for my lessons, you know, there's a bunch of tips that I give that are skill-based, and there's a bunch of tips that are mindset-based. And so if you can get a handle on, you know, what are like some core mindset lessons that you, or points that you want to encourage and develop in your students, and then sprinkle that throughout your lessons and revisit it, right? Because there's this idea of the forgetfulness curve, and you can look that up online. I think it was, you know, created, I can't remember the person's name, but in the 1800s, and there's been lots of research testing it in different arenas. And the basic idea is that, you know, you go to a lesson, you receive information from this knowledgeable person, and then the next day you have forgotten, like, I think you've forgotten 40% of it or something like that. And then within a week, you've forgotten 90%. If you don't do anything, if you just receive the information and then you just sit. There's ways to increase that retention by practicing, right? So this is what we're doing with Jack, you know, pencil miles, and, you know, getting out there and journaling every day. So when you teach something to the students, figure out a way to encourage them to practice that specific topic, that specific skill, right? Every day if possible, if not maybe 3 times in that week, because every time you repeat it, you're recording it in your brain, because our brain only remembers what you do, what you repeat. Because if you think about it, our brain is getting thousands and thousands and thousands of bits of information, right? Like, as I'm sitting here talking to you, my brain is recording, like, what the seat feels like what does this cup feels like, so I know if it's too hot that I don't grab it, or how does my skin feel, how does the pen feel in my hand. And all of that is like, would be information overload if it was all retained, right? So the brain remembers what it repeats, or what you repeat. So if you want your student to remember, let's say, I notice, I wonder, it reminds me of, right? The 3 foundational sentence starters for nature journaling. Then repeat that, right? Talk about it, introduce it, and then figure out an activity and reinforce it throughout the week. So the more times that you do that, the stronger it's going to be, and it'll become habitual. And I've noticed that about my students too. As a teacher, I have the kind of default tendency of like, oh, I want to make sure I give you enough information so that you're getting your money's worth. Right? But then what happens is, like, then I feel like I'm fire hosing you with information. Now you've got this wealth of information, but you're going to forget it in a week unless you repeat it. So I'm really adjusting my teaching style to kind of scale back giving too much information, because it can be overwhelming, and online it can be really overwhelming too. So I think, slowing down with how much you present, because your students are going to be getting so much information from their other classes. That's going to help ensure that they're going to retain what you teach. And how that looks in the classroom, might be different for each of you. And then the sharing portion of it, it's hard to get everyone's voices in at the end for sharing. So that's why I think I'm going to use Padlet. And what I've done is I've encouraged my students to, in between classes, load up your pages, load it up into this communal bulletin board, so to speak. So I was using WhatsApp, but I'm going to use Padlet. And then during the week, I can go online into the classroom and give feedback right away. And then the other students can see. And then once a week, I meet with my students. So then what I do is I can go through, it's called Padlet, Padlet, and it's free. And I'm not sure. Yeah, it's free, and you can use it on any device. And there's an app. That's the other thing, which was really cool, because then you can be on your phone, go to the Padlet app, and then you can look online. So you don't have to go to the website, and it's web based. And I think it's not social media. So I was also looking for something that was not social media. So that's what I'm going to go with for my next round of classes. Yeah, Padlet. Deb's put it in there. And then that way I can just go through and skim through and highlight and say, hey, look, so-and-so's got, has this really great idea to do this, and everyone can see the screen at the same time. So you can share the screen of Padlet while you're in class, if you wish to. But I think it's really important to have some component of sharing in the classroom so that you can point out, what's really interesting about a particular page. Because if you leave the students to just go and look at the Padlet on their own, it can be overwhelming, and they're not going to get the point that you want them to get. So I think that's some of the things that I do for connection. And I encourage them to go and share as much as you can, share your page, have the courage, right? Because when we have something to learn from everybody, regardless of how old you are or how much of experience you have. Sometimes the person who, I'll share with you, some people that I've had that said they've nature journal for the first time in my class, and they share their page. There's some incredible insight that they have. And I highlight that. If I know that this is someone who's new or struggling, I make sure to find something good in every share. And that just is a skill, right? Again, it's a skill that you can develop, and it's a skill that I'm continuously honing and developing. And I watch Jack, I, use the resources that he's talking about, watch other nature journal teachers, come to my free sessions, on Sundays. If you want more guidance, I'm available for mentorship too. So I really, want to help teachers be successful, because you are affecting so many lives in your classroom. And I feel like, right, Jack and I are just two people, but if we can help you be successful, you're helping the students, and they are going to share that light with the rest of the world.
I am so glad I prompted you to say a little bit more. That was, this is all being recorded. I'm going to put it online.
Okay.
This is going to be really useful for a lot of other people.
Okay.
Thank you, Melinda.
Yeah.
Let's hear from some other folks who have had some either two things: either some experience using a particular platform, something that you found that works, either like I was using this, I use these settings because I was having this trouble, or if you have are kind of running into a challenge, like here's what I'm trying to do, and here's the problems that I'm facing. I think that this little forum here with all of these brains poking around here on this would be a really productive way to kind of try to problem solve challenges that you're having. Jack out.
I have a suggestion for something that might work for people who have to have their students turn in their nature journals via some kind of online means. I was recently introduced to Google Slides, which is not a new thing, but new to me in some ways. But the way that this particular Google Slides was set up so that it might be useful for this type of project was really interesting. And so I just wanted to explain it a little bit. And it's something that would be a platform that most people are used to using. So if you've ever used like any kind of Microsoft or Google tools like PowerPoint or any of the other like Google Drive apps, that this is something that you wouldn't have to spend a lot of time learning how to use, basically, is what I'm trying to say. But so in this example of Google Slides, there's a teacher who's been using it for science notebooks. And so similar to the idea of nature journaling, but maybe with a little less drawing. And so in this notebook, she created the slides, so they were the same aspect of like a notebook or a sketchbook or something like that. And then sort of set up the slides, you know, I'm not sure how many slides are in here, maybe like 20 to 40 slides that would encompass all of the activities that they would be doing throughout this project. And then you can make a table of contents that links to each of the slides where these particular activities start. And so when you're looking for, maybe you're doing a project on comparing, you can click on that and that will take you exactly to that slide where it talks about the comparing project. And then you can also have your students take photos of their nature journal pages and upload them to this slide. They can even upload like video if they wanted to explain it, or if they wanted to show the things that they were seeing while they were drawing. The teacher can also put in like reference if you had specific images you wanted your students to work from. And so there's all kinds of really fun things that you could do with this, and then you could make it as public or private as you wanted. So essentially you could make one notebook for all of everybody in the class that they share, and everybody puts all of their suggestions and their nature journaling pages into one big document. Or you can share a copy of this individually with each of your students, so they have their own notebook that only you and they can see. And so then you can go through and you can see everything that they've uploaded. You can even add your own text in there to give feedback or feed forward to the students as they are presenting their work to you. So that's something that I'm going to implement in one of the courses that I'm teaching online this coming semester. And so I thought that this was something that people might find useful and fairly easy to use.
Ashley, that's cool. I have not heard of that format. That'll be an interesting thing to investigate, because as you say, you know, a lot of people, you know, my second grader, they had her in school make a slide PowerPoint presentation for a project that she did. So a lot of people are getting exposure on how to use that kind of software. I like how you're sort of thinking of formats that people are kind of intuitively familiar with. Once you implement that, we'd love to hear back from you about your experience of using that format in your class. And maybe what we'll do is we'll bring you on as a co-host and have you kind of take us on a walk through that. That would be very interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I am working with undergraduate and graduate students at a university, so it might be a little bit different, but I think a lot of it is still applicable for, I mean, most kids these days know how to work technology better than adults do. So honestly, it might be easier for them to implement these things than even some of my graduate students.
Yeah. And don't forget this group as a resource when you're looking for study subjects for future projects. Excellent. So Kathy has got, she can share an example of some Google Slides as a science notebook.
Yeah, I'll grab it. I took a class, an educator class here in Arizona, and the lady that was teaching it had used Google Slides in the the same way that she was mentioning. So I can share what she had us do. And it was kind of like I mean, some parts of it are kind of sciencey, notebooky. So I can share it. Just know that it belongs to another teacher that I took a class with.
Is it possible to share that as a share screen? Do you have that option on your screen?
I can just post the link. I mean, well, let me see. I think I can do a share screen. Hang on a second. I'm on my phone right now. My daughter's doing something on my laptop. Let me find it. And also, the person that asked about Google Classroom, you don't have to be a school to use Google Classroom. It's free. I use it for my environmental education program. Let me see if I can find it. Give me a second. It might take me a minute if somebody else wants to talk.
So Kathy's going to be investigating that to see if she can show us an example, which would be fun to see. While that's going on, what are other folks experience with? I'll tell you folks some stuff that that Melinda and I have been figuring out about using the Zoom platform. One is that there's a lot of things going on when you're running a Zoom class. People are dropping stuff into the chat box. There can be you know, people who have just unmuted themselves and are vacuuming the floor, right? You know, Zoom faux pas. There can, and so having a buddy, if you're teaching on Zoom, as a co-host is huge. So when I sign on to these classes, what I do is I hit the button, the Zoom meeting comes up, I can see there's some people in the waiting room. I go in there, I look for Melinda, I make Melinda a co-host. So you can make people what are called co-hosts. And when you've got a co-host, that person can, while you are teaching, that person can be investigating the chat. So while Melinda was talking, somebody asked about, could you say that name of the camera again? And I typed it into the chat. While I'm teaching, you know, somebody will ask a question and Melinda will like put up a link to that. So the buddy system, because you have this chat thing and a lot of people kind of interact on that and other people are kind of interacting with you. If you try to do both at the same time, it looks a lot like, okay, and you know, and so your presentation will tank.
Oh.
Just because of our bandwidth is not wide enough. Our cognitive load, the term is your cognitive load. You can't handle chatting and teaching at the same time. So the same thing, by the way, with everybody, same thing with texting and driving, talking on your phone and driving, right? So just no more. You think you can? There's actually some really cool research on the impact of doing that, and it's really clear that it's not even just having some, even if you're doing the stuff hands-free, your brain cannot handle the load of interacting like that and safely operating a vehicle. The same thing, interacting like that and presenting. So the buddy system is huge. If you are, Zoom has several settings that are very useful for people. You can set it up so that when people come on, they are muted. And you can turn off their ability to unmute themselves until you want them to be able to. So in a class like this, we've turned off the thing so everybody's able to unmute themselves, mute and unmute as they see fit. But if you are going to be doing, you know, teaching a workshop on growth mindset, whatever it is, and you don't want the vacuum cleaner to appear partway through, that's a very useful setting to have. And we've also found that it is useful to not assume that everybody is a Zoom meeting jockey. that we know how to use these. So something that Melinda will often do at the start of classes that we're doing together, she will just lead with like, hey, everybody, if you're new to this, this is what is happening. And so kind of like, you know, sort of like these little buttons down here, like this one does this one does this, that thing up in the corner right there, that's going to do this. If you push this, you can move this screen this way so that, you know, because if you are able to see a slide and a drawing that's going on at the same time, and you don't know that you can move the little slider back and forth so that you can make the drawing big and the reference photo small, or back, so that nobody should know that, because, you know, because we're new to this Zoom thing. So she also does this sort of a kind of a quick orientation to people, just so that this medium becomes a little bit more clear, and a little bit easier to use. So I find that those are kind of some helpful strategies. With just logistics of Zoom meetings, are there any other settings that people find particularly helpful?
I'll add one thing. I think that Zoom by default has the waiting room established. And so that means that everyone who logs into the Zoom will be kind of held in a waiting room. And unless you admit them, and I think maybe, you know, schools are probably like that, so make sure you're admitting only students, right, that are supposed to be in your class. You can admit all of them, you know, one by one. And if you had, you know, an assistant or a buddy, like Jack is saying, would be a great idea to be monitoring that. Although maybe in a classroom, you know who's in the class and you can just check mark it, and then you don't have to worry about letting anybody else in. The other thing I wanted to come back to, Jack was talking about the not being able to monitor the chat and teach at the same time. You could also just disable the chat if you know that you're not going to use it, or you can just say, you know, we're not going to be using the chat. I want everyone to listen to, you know, listen to what I'm talking about. And so let's save all of our questions for the stopping point. Because my very first Zoom meeting a few years ago, I remember the teacher was talking and I am a good student, so I'm like listening and taking notes, and then she says, now type into chat the answer to blah blah blah, and I'm thinking, how can I listen to you talking and type and read the chat at the same time? And it was really frustrating and overwhelming, and I almost quit, but I was paying too much money to do that. So what I learned from that, and which I just remembered now that you're talking, Jack, is that yeah, I'm getting more comfortable with reading the chat and teaching, but maybe stepping back from that and saying, okay, you know, maybe certain parts of the class I'm going to ask the students to type an answer in chat, and then I'm just going to encourage them, please, you know, we're going to hold off on the chat, and then just listen to what's going on and take notes in your notebook. Right? It's so that you're encouraging them to focus their attention, not divide their focus between the texting and driving, right? But just say, let's just drive right now, right? Because you as the adult knows that when you're doing these multitasking, it's not multitasking, it's task switching. So you're switching back and forth. And like Jack said, there's brain research that says it takes you a lot of brain energy to switch between one and two. And you think you're doing well with them, but you know, there's, I think Stanford, maybe it was, that did a study that you actually are doing 50%, you're doing both jobs poorly. You think you're doing both, but you're actually doing both jobs poorly. So you would be better off just focusing on one. So perhaps, I'm not sure what Google is like, but you know, with Zoom, you know, maybe using that periodically, that chat. So it's not constant, like, because I think with adolescents, it depends on what your kids are like. I was just on a meeting with high school kids. They're just chatting like, hey, look at that, like, what's this, what'd they say? And there's this chat going on that's crazy. So perhaps like maybe encouraging not to use the chat. And I think there's a way that you can disable, Jack, I'm not sure if like maybe during the meeting, if you can stop the chat or not, but that might be something to look into too, you know, as a teacher, if you're using Zoom as a platform.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, folks, Kathy is booted up and ready. Kathy, let's
Well,
jump.
no, it's not. This share screen's not working on my phone. I just posted the link if you want to
Okay.
share it. I have multiple email accounts and it's just not cooperating. You should be able to open that. This is just, that's an example of, she does a lot of STEM challenges, so she's using it for doing STEM challenges virtually. So she basically sets up the slides with the challenge, and then the kids literally, like in this case, this is for like kindergarten, first grade. So the kids were using shapes to build bridges. So like you can see, like those are the ones that the teachers had done that were on the class. And the kids can, you know, like you can type and draw and everything, and the teacher sees it immediately.
Jack, do you want me to share that so we can see it? Or you've got it? Oh, you've got it.
And
Sure.
then, so, and then like, here's another one. Let me grab it. The other one, she does a lot of like literature STEM stuff, so that's mostly what these are, but you could easily adapt it. And so basically she sends everybody the link, and it's open access, and you have open access to edit. So you can go in, like, so basically each teacher picked a page. She already had the template done. So she had a blank template and then gave us a challenge, and you had to do the challenge. And like another one of them, you had to like type a sentence or whatever. So she basically just has these templates and then shares the link with the students, and then they go in and type in or do whatever they were going to do. And then there's another one where she has like a KWL chart, you know, where the kids can type in. So I'll share the three I could find just to give you guys ideas. But anyway, so like the kids don't even, like they don't have to really know how to use Google Docs because the template's already there. You know, she just kind of gave everybody a quick tutorial, like here's how you click on shapes and add shapes and things like that. So
Cool. That's very cool. Thank you for sharing that with us.
Can I ask a question? Kathy, I'm just thinking in the context of nature journaling, like if we had, you know, for this class, this is the prompt and you have the template, like this is the prompt, these are instructions, maybe here's an example, and then you go and create separate slides for each student, and then they go and upload a picture of their nature journal page, for example.
exactly.
And then, so in order to give feedback, you would put, like, do you put it in the comments down below, or if someone was
I
in a
mean,
text box?
you can go on, you should be able to add like an annotation.
Mm-hmm.
I know you can do it. I'm on my phone, so I don't know.
Okay, all right.
But yeah, you
No,
can
it sounds like a great idea.
like for instance, I download curriculum that I want to use for my classes, and I go in and like activities I like, you basically drop a post-it note on it and you can type. So like I actually have hashtags. So I go in and I put hashtag like I wanted to do this activity with whatever, like my eco explorers or whatever. That's how I lesson plan. So yeah, with like Google Slides and Google Drive, you can go in, you can even leave like comments, like if a person types something in Google Docs, like you can leave a comment and it actually notifies that person that you left a comment. Like it's pretty crazy the stuff you can do with Google, the Google Suite. And same thing like Google Classroom, if you're looking for more like private comments to people and you're using Google Classroom, which like my kids do a cultural club with their friends in Georgia on Google Classroom, and they can upload and share projects they make. And then you can give feedback directly to a student. That way everybody doesn't see it. So it can be a private comment. Also in Google Classroom, you can set up like quizzes. You could ask questions, like for my nature class, to try to get the kids to think a little before we meet. You know, I would ask them like, I don't know, do you know the rock cycle? Describe it in your own words. And they can answer that question and it sends it to me. And then I can leave feedback for them. Oh, like, I really like your thoughts, you know, whatever. So Google Classroom is really amazing and free.
You just have to
and
have everyone needs to have a Google account though, right? In order to access it.
I don't necessarily, I think you do have to have a Gmail account.
Yeah,
I could be wrong though. I think I have.
Actually is shaking her head.
I'm pretty sure I have a student though. I have somebody that uses like a Hotmail.
If
Actually,
you just share the link with them, then basically it's using your Google Drive. So you share the link with whatever the Hotmail account is. They click on it, they can access it through that link and edit it through that link.
So they just use a web browser.
Yeah, and like, yeah, Google Classroom also has an app too. So it's also easily done that way and really safe too. Like, you can't even do a screenshot of Google Classroom from your phone. Like, they have it disabled, so you can't like do a screenshot of like people's information. Like,
or
they
pictures of kids.
Yeah, so yeah, we've been using Google Classroom for a while now, and it's really easy for the kids. Like, I've got 7, 8-year-olds that use Google Classroom by themselves, and don't have any issues with it. So, no, he doesn't.
So, thank you so much. I think I definitely need to check out Google Classrooms a little bit more. Before we wrap today, people were asking a little bit about the document cameras, and so that has ended up being this little tool here has been a game changer for me in being able to teach online classes. And so I just wanted people to kind of walk you through what it's like with this. There are other brands of document cameras. This one I like. It's the IPEVO VZR. This cable that you see here goes directly into a USB port on my computer. And when I go, if you notice there's that little thing on the bottom of your screen that says stop video, there's a little arrow next to it. And when I click on that, I can toggle between this camera and the camera on my little computer there. So look at that. We've got the little inception moment going on here, worlds within worlds. And so it's a high def camera. It allows me to, so I'm just gonna point it right down here at a piece of paper. You can reorient it so that, you know, the top is top, bottom is bottom. You can put real artifacts on it, and you get kind of a clear view of those. You can have a journal open. You can kind of just do journal share things with people, or you can draw directly on here. Notice that sometimes when I'm drawing, it'll start to focus on the back of my hand if I'm really, really close. But it does a pretty good job of, you'll be able to draw and sketch, and people can see that process. If you want to, you can zoom in, right? And then people can see what you're doing there. It has a built-in light if you need things brighter. You can zoom back out. You can also kind of adjust all sorts of settings with it, contrast, and you can go into, different sorts of artsy color modes if you want to, like, really make people sick to their stomach. But basically it's got a black and white mode, and the black and white mode and the normal one are, I think, the only ones you'd ever use. I don't know really why you'd want to use those, but should you feel artsy, you can really make things garish and ugly. But it's a well-made, sturdy thing. I have dropped it twice, or it's fallen off my table twice, and it still is working. So that is, you know, one I was responsible for, the other Carolyn helped me with. So you can also turn it up and be able to talk into it. So you can use it as another camera to be able to speak to. It also has a built-in microphone, and the microphone, I've been told in this document camera is better than the microphone that comes with my computer. So when I've tested with people sort of side by side, they say that the microphone that I'm getting when I'm going through this little camera is they get better sound. So, and that's pretty useful. So I use that when I am teaching something. I can sort of logistics, sort of the bag of tricks that I have when I am teaching. I can toggle between you, and I can toggle between you, right? So I can show people drawing. I will also sometimes, let me go over to, let's see, I'm going to do a screen share. And I am going to share a Photoshop. Oops, I shared a Keynote document. So actually, you know, so here are other sorts of things that I can do in sort of teaching in this sort of online environment. If I do a screen share and I go to PowerPoint or Keynote, right? I can show videos through that, and I can.
Can I jump in for a minute? This is a perfect time to explain how to change the view options.
Great.
So yeah, so everyone, if you look at your screen, you'll see it says you are viewing John Muir Laws' screen, view options. If you click the little arrow next to view options, and you can select side-by-side mode if it's not selected already. So if you go and do that now, side-by-side mode means that you're seeing the screen share of the horses and you're seeing Jack's face, right? The two videos. And if you go to the three lines that are next to between Jack and the horses and put your mouse, this is only for the computers though, I'm sorry about the iPads and the phones. But if you're on a computer, you can mouse over this line that's between the two screens and you can click and drag it. So try doing that. Then you can make Jack's video larger or the horse video larger. And it's dynamic. You can change it throughout the video. So if you want to get a closer look at the horse, you can make that larger. And Jack also has the opportunity, I think he's going to go into now, is also showing the document camera instead of his video, so that you can watch Jack draw something and see the reference photo at the same time.
So you could have a photo up on the screen, and I'm drawing it right here, real time. Let's swing this around. So I've got this space, so you can see me now be able to draw at the same time that I am. Hold on, I'm gonna. So you can see me draw and have the reference up there simultaneously. So that's a very useful thing. And I want to actually turn this way so that, yeah, there we go. I like it so that up is up. What I can do is I can have a reference photo. Let's say we're going to go here. Not you, not you. I want just a still photo. All right, so I can have a still photo up, and then I can look at the reference photo. People can look at the reference photo. You move that thing back and forth. The user can decide how big this is versus how big the reference photo is, right? So that's very, very useful. The other thing that I have in the bag of tricks, I'm going to stop sharing this. So I can also, I'm going to go to screen share again, but I have Adobe Photoshop, And if I bring people over to Adobe Photoshop, I can, so this is a graphic that I'm putting together for teaching people about gates. And if I select my drawing tool, I can draw directly on here. So people, I'm going to just go file, new document, and there we go. So I could, with this, have sort of something sort of set up so that I can show people kind of what might be some preliminary lines that I could put in for blocking in the drawing of a bird. And I can draw here, my hand's not in the way. You don't see the real media, but sometimes, you know, this can be kind of just another really neat way that you can learn about how to draw. So this is sort of using Photoshop and drawing on the screen directly. Now, drawing, if you don't have a drawing tablet, drawing on the screen is going to be really, really difficult for you to do. So this is drawing with a drawing tablet and using that with a share screen, and that seems to work pretty well. But so all of those are all kind of functional ways of getting information about, you know, if you want to do sort of just drawing technique stuff, getting that over to the viewers. That's when Melinda and I do Tuesday, Thursday journaling workshops. That's we use the combination of those techniques on a regular basis.
Yeah, can I?
Yes.
Oh, I just want to throw in, for those of you who may not have the budget for a document camera, is a colleague of mine uses her iPhone, and she sets it up, she props up her phone, and she actually puts a magnifying loop and she rubber bands it to her phone so she can turn it into a dissecting scope. And she props it up on, I mean, she does it, she's just this great way. She props it up on books or something to elevate it and to hold it up. Then she can, what she does is she logs in to Zoom with her phone as one participant, and she's logged in on her computer as another participant. Then she makes her phone the co-host so that she has ability from both to share the screen or do whatever. So I haven't done it personally myself, but that's what she does because she doesn't have the budget to buy a document camera. And I think it's such a clever way, you know, to come up with what can you do with limited funds, or, you know, what do with what you've got. And I think this is a really great idea. And it looks like someone else has tried to put a magnifying loop over, not over the document camera, but yeah, you could do it over your phone and magnify.
And there's also just one other question somebody had on on spotlighting. So spotlighting is if I'm the host and I want everybody to be watching me, right? And it not to, if somebody kind of goes, achoo, it to go to the screen of the person who just sneezed. When it's on, when you are on speaker view and somebody else's noise comes through, it will, the computer thinks that they're trying to talk, and so it jumps over to them. So when their vacuum cleaner goes on, or sometimes people forget that they're not muted and they're like, okay, yeah, we'll be done with this pretty soon. He's kind of talking about horse hooves right now. And so you get that person. So to avoid that, you can, what's called spotlighting your own video. You can click spotlight, and then that holds that place for, I think, for everybody else's screen.
Yes, it's for everyone's screen. And you can only do that if you're the host or co-host. And everyone has the ability as a participant to change someone had asked a question. You can change the view on your screen by clicking gallery or gallery or speaker. So you can change, if you don't want to see Jack's screen really large, you can go back to gallery view and he's small again. But as the host or co-host, you're setting it for everyone to view. So you have the option of viewing Jack large, big Jack, or little Jack in the gallery view. And if you're recording like Jack does, and I record too, by keeping it on spotlight view, that ensures that screen is going to stay in the video instead of going to the person who sneezes or any other distractions.
The final thing that we'll do is I find that when people hold their things up, we want to bring everybody's attention to them. So I go to gallery view, and then let's say Ashley holds something up and she wants to share. I will say, I'll first have it set so people can unmute themselves. And then we'll say like, oh, Ashley's got something really cool to show. And I've just spotlighted Ashley, right? So I click spotlight on Ashley, it automatically goes to her. It's going to stay on Ashley. And at a time where other people are unmuted, and so she can talk, she can do her thing. And then when I want to go back, I go cancel spotlight, I go back to gallery view, and I'm now going like, oh, look, Debbie's got something to share over here, and let's see what's up with Debbie. And so useful notes, right? So those are some those are kind of some group management tricks that Melinda and I have been kind of figuring out. It does make it a lot easier to be able to again, having a buddy is huge, and just because of your cognitive load when you're doing it all by yourself, and something I've sometimes done when I haven't had a buddy is I'll kind of get onto the meeting and say like, for this meeting, I am going to need a co-host. Is there somebody who'd be willing to monitor the chat and those sorts of things while we're doing this? And if any inappropriate content pops up, to be able to kind of mute all and help block that person. And somebody will volunteer. Then you go and you can go. If I click on your screen, those little 3 dots, I'm able to make somebody a co-host by doing that. All right. So we have gone a little bit over our time. It's supposed to be a 1-hour workshop, but we've had I think we've had a look at some useful strategies for running your online meetings. And I hope that you've got some ideas of things that you can do to make this online form and environment work for your nature journaling teaching. Thank you folks so much for participating today.